Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Barry Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got one of my sponsors on in Vizsla Silver today, and I'm tremendously bullish on Vizsla Silver uh, long before they became a sponsor because what really caught my attention is the preliminary economic assessment that they put out, in particular, the internal rate of return. And that was made even more exciting by the fact that they have a very low capex, especially for the building of the Panuko mine. And if you use the price before of gold and silver before they became a sponsor, it showed that they were going to have a internal rate of return three times or three digits, so over 100%, and that has only gotten better. And why I'm so excited about the future of Vizsla is that I think a lot more generalist investors are going to get into the gold and silver stocks. And when they do, there is really no other companies that have those kind of statistics across, well, pretty much mining anything. And so that makes Vizsla Silver very exciting. And I'm happy to have Michael Connard on today to talk. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Oh, it's great to be here, Alan. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So, as we've been talking over the last few months, Michael, the IRR just gets better and better. Gold is, now north of 3,000. I think it's on its way to 4,000 this year and higher prices in the coming years. And that just makes the economics of your project even better and makes you look even more unique.
Yeah, we're thrilled about this when we put out you know, the uh, the PEA. We used numbers. I think it was $26 silver and maybe 2,200 gold. And now we're looking at 3,000 plus gold, and silver looks to be climbing as well. I think silver is going to have an excellent year this year. Typically when gold has these major moves, silver does lag behind. But regardless, it's a phenomenal project. It's the best precious metals project that I've ever seen, and these economics are fantastic. And it's always been our goal not to go backwards from the PEA into the feasibility study that we're working on. So we're hoping to to be able to demonstrate some of this value, both at the metal prices that we used in the PEA. I think that'll be consistent with what we look at in the feasibility study, but also showing that upside case with spot prices. So it's spectacular. It's a cash flow machine, and it's only project one in our district here, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, and bringing that into context, the last time I saw a company that was close to these economics was Silvercrest, and I picked them as they were transitioning to becoming a miner, and ultimately they were able to see they went into full commercial production with $100 million in debt. They, within a few quarters of full commercial production, they paid down all that debt. And just prior to being taken over by Core, they had over close to $200 million in cash, and in bullion with gold and silver. And that's indicative of what these epithermal vein cluster mines can be, and your numbers are even better. Well, partially because of the higher gold and silver prices.
Yeah, well, that certainly helps, but I think even just the fact that Copala is the way that it is, Copala, of course, being our main structure, it sits very close to surface. It's extremely thick. It's about 10 meters thick. It's less than 80 meters subsurface, and the grades are absolutely spectacular there. So we've started that test mine. into Copala. Uh, we're about 20 meters or so subsurface now, and so we're excited later this year to get down to that mineralization at Copala and really start to reconcile that with our drilling. But also, I think it's going to be fantastic for us to be able to see and touch that mineralization and then bring it above surface and have that in a stockpile ready for when the mill starts. So it's very exciting, and the progress is great. We're really looking forward to feasibility study later this year, permitting, of course, and then financing the mine and getting into production and capturing these high metal prices.
Well, I certainly want to talk about that and the uniqueness of your epithermal vein system. But before I go off the Silvercrest analogy, there's another important, in the business, we often talk about people. And, guys like Ross Beatty and Robert Friedland and, those kind of people, they get the most attention, and somewhat rightfully so. They've done a tremendous job being mine builders. But what guys like Simon Smirlick don't get as much attention. I mean, you say his name, and I don't think a lot of people out in the investing side really know, but he's built 40 some mines in his career, and one of those was Silvercrest. And what is tremendous about Silvercrest is that they had to fight with inflation and COVID, and yet were able to bring that mine into production on time and on budget. And, that speaks to the skills of Simon Smirlick, who's on your board of directors and a key player on your team. And I think he's going to prove to be an unsung hero when you do bring this into production.
Well, I'm hoping that he'll be more of a sung hero, as time goes on, because as our chief operating officer, is a director basically at the very beginning of Visla, helped me, really kind of guided me in terms of how to build a team and how to focus on these things technically early on. And I think his approach to this will become clear to the markets, and I think he'll start to really get that notoriety in a very positive way as we move this into production. So, it's incredible to have him there. He's been a mentor to me. He's a great friend, and now he's leading the build of what we think is going to be the world's best silver mine. So it's pretty exciting, and I think he'll certainly get the accolades that he deserves.
Well, he's certainly high on my list because of the success I had picking Silvercrest. And, there's a lot of similarities between Silvercrest. Like, I've heard Rick Rule say, well, you want key people that have relevant experience to the kind of deposit you're trying to either explore or develop. And in Simon Smirlick and with Silvercrest, that's a direct parallel. You're looking at a cluster of epithermal veins that are high grade and low cost to mine. And, so it's a perfect parallel.
Yeah, and to expand on that even a little bit more, we have Jesus Velador, who's our vice president of exploration, and of course he was credited with being on the Fresnillo side of the Juanicipio discovery from the Meg Silver Juanicipio discovery, which was a joint venture between Fresnillo and Meg, and he actually has a PhD in epithermal precious metals veins in Mexico, specifically, the ones that we're looking for and we have here at Panuko. And then of course we have Eduardo Luna, who spent most of his career with San Dimas, which is probably the best analog to what we have in a lot of ways. It's about 80 kilometers away. It's produced over 1 billion ounces of silver equivalent in its history, and it still does great numbers. He really guided that project for decades. So we do have a lot of experience in our team that's specific to these type of high grade epithermal clusters in Mexico. So yeah, it's very good. Our team is has come together perfectly to unlock the value here.
I often say because I live in Mexico and I know the environment here when it comes to silver mining is that, if you're interested in investing in silver mines, all roads lead to Mexico. 25% of the silver ever produced in the world has come from Mexico. And we've named now some of the key reasons for that in the past couple decades. You've got Silvercrest in the north. You've got Fresnillo area as you get closer to where your project is, and that's been in production for 500 years. They've got a cluster of epithermal veins there in an area of about 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers, where Fresnillo was the lowest cost producer of gold, silver because of the Fresnillo district. Mag Silver and their joint venture on the Juanicipio right next door to the city of Fresnillo. Then you go down the road towards Panuco and you've got the San Dimas and that region. Little further down the road, and you've got Panuco. And so you're in I think you've called it the Silver Highway or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Sinaloa Silver Highway.
Yeah. Well, that highway extends from Sinaloa all the way up to Durango and then into Fresnillo and Zacatecas. And so, what I don't think a lot of people are really understand about this corridor of Zacatecas, Fresnillo, Durango, and southern Sinaloa is that these have very big clusters of epithermal veins. And you can sort of look at it in two ways. One is that you can build like the old way, which was to, sort of focus on one or two of those veins, bring those into production, keep drilling those to keep the production growing, and then spread out. And the Fresnillo district is a perfect example. 500 years ago, the city of Fresnillo was where it all started. Then Fresnillo PLC moved to the oh, I always forget the name, but just right beside it, and then over to Juanicipio. So in that corridor, you've had tremendous production of really low cost, high grade, free cash flow machines. And why I keep bringing that up in consideration of Vizsla is that you could have that whole district in 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 your Panuco project, and then you're looking for other districts as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we have I always mention we have a big vision, and it's not just to, get project number one close to production and sell it. You really come across things like this once in a lifetime if you're extremely lucky. And we got extremely lucky. We put ourselves in a position to get extremely lucky by taking a big swing and, consolidating this project in the first place. That was the first step to doing that, of course. And the geology cooperated and the mineralization cooperated with our risk-taking exploration, which again very rarely happens. And so we've been aggressive in consolidating not only more pieces of ground in our original district, because we think there's going to be multiple mines in that original district, but we bought 10,000 hectares to the south at the San Enrique prospect area there, which is all along trend of our major structures. And then we bought the Lagara district to the north, which is equidistant between San Dimas and us. And that's a kind of, exploration unknown area. It's just never been explored. It's a little bit more remote. And it looks so fertile to us. It's just incredible. The same type of structures that run through San Dimas and run through Panuco exist there based on historic mining. But so we we look at project number one, which is going to have immense cash flow from year one of production, as really being that starter project, which it's a world class project, but think about the scale here. It's a starter project for the rest of the district, and I think it's possible for us to grow from 20 million ounces to 30 million ounces, 40, 50 million ounces and beyond, just on the properties that we have today. And as part of that, we've been busy this year. We completed the infill campaign. We've started the test mine, but we've also done exploration drilling, and we did make a new discovery to the northeast, about 6 kilometers from project number one to the northeast on the Anima structure. So I've seen some of the work that Jesus and the team, of course, have been putting on the back of that discovery and increased exploration, and I'm thrilled. I think we're going to continue to make new discoveries outboard of project number one, and start to really demonstrate that district scale upside to the northeast and elsewhere on the property. So, the vision for Visla 5 years from now, of course, project number one will be in production, but I think we'll have a real center of mass starting to gather steam somewhere else on the property that will give us that next phase of growth. So it's really thrilling.
Well, I had the benefit of having a mentor in geophysics who was at one time the world exploration manager for gold and for Anglo. And I love the guy because he's, real basic, and, keeps things simple, even though he's a brilliant geophysicist and astrophysicist as well. And one thing he used to say is that, in this business, you got to roll the dice. He would go and talk about rolling the dice. And you guys really rolled the dice on Panuko in the early days. I remember watching you guys, and people would keep on saying, well, how are they going to get that? That's an expensive buy for a tiny little company. How are they going to do that? Then you did it. And there was another roll of the dice that I'll talk about, but I'll let you first address your initial roll of the dice.
Well, that was pretty wild, and looking back, it was it was a pretty big undertaking. Of course, the Vizsla Silver was a company that I incorporated as Vizsla Resources, took it public with a very small $2 million market cap at the time IPO. We started to get a bit of steam, but really we were searching for something like this, and turned out that the way that we could acquire something like this was to enter an option that was 6 or 7 times our market cap in terms of cash payments in a short period of time for something with no resource and no clear discovery. So it was pretty fun. We had a lot of naysayers that we proved wrong, and I think that's in our DNA a little bit here with Visla. We like to set ourselves on big tasks, and when I talk about these 5 and 10 year plans for the company of growth and multiple centers of mass, I think that's along the same vein. It's something that's big, it's aspirational, and it's a bit of rolling the dice and that type of thing. But if anything's been proven here at this project, it's that there's the potential for world-class mines in this map here. So we're confident that we can find another. But that was a pretty exciting time. Of course, we all my life savings in the company bet on a discovery hole in Mexico, and then of course we made the discovery. Silver price really was helping at the time, so we were able to raise a lot of money and be successful. Giving people a return on that investment, and continuing to raise money, and that's turned into now 100% ownership of the original project. Of course, tripling the land package, having a world-class PEA there, and moving very rapidly into being the largest single asset silver producer in the world.
Well, during my 30 plus years in this business, I've noticed that, a lot of the great stories started out with a big roll of the dice. Chuck Fipke in diamonds, he was for many years walking across the Northwest Territories looking for diamond indicator minerals and finally found the source of those diamond indicator minerals. And stock went from, I don't know, pennies to over $100 split adjusted. And it was a phenomenal success in the 1990s. Another one was Robert Friedland's Diamond Fields. You know, they were out there in Eastern Canada looking for diamonds, and their geologists were flying back to the camp and saw a rusty colored outcropping of rock. And they convinced Robert Friedland and management that we got to drill this
Yeah.
because the grades of those surface samples were so high. And they were able to convince management to go ahead and drill it, even though they weren't looking for base metals. And they found one of the greatest mines in Canadian history. I also saw that with Arequipa. You know, they were run by Catherine McLeod and his name David.
Dave Lowell.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and they actually didn't even drill. They tunneled into a mountain, and it was like drilling, but they got like a 3D cross section. They got a three-dimensional idea of what they had. And by the time they drilled it, a year later, they went from 30 cents to $30 and were bought out by Barrick. And that's been a phenomenal mine. And so, you know, a lot of these stories, they start out like that, where somebody's willing to take a big roll of the dice. And boy, has it ever turned out great for you, because you guys have found a lot of these epithermal veins systems, they come in clusters. And oftentimes the surface expressions of those can be very small, and they get walked over for years and years and years. Juanicipio with Mag Silver and the nearby Saucito, I finally remembered the name, that had been walked over by geologists and prospectors for many, many years because the surface expressions were so small. But another thing that's interesting about these epithermal vein systems is not only that they come in clusters, but oftentimes some of the great ones, the veins don't even come to surface. They're called blind veins. And you know, the way you find them is by looking for another one. And so you kind of got that luck of the roll of the dice worked out good for you, because that's in fact what you did to find your best one so far.
That's right, with Copala. So it's we discovered that drilling into Tajitos, which is an adjacent structure, and we were trying to find the right angle to get into Tajitos, and we drilled through mineralization much sooner than we originally expected, and it was much wider than we ever could imagine, 80 plus meters of high grade silver, and that was just an incredible day when we when we found that out, of course, and then we drilled through, and we did hit Tajitos as well. So it's very true, and these are this mineralization is structurally controlled. It's so we've identified these corridors like the Animus corridor. We've made that new discovery to the northeast where we had some spectacular high grades there, but we're also undertaking more drilling in the Copala area, and we do know that there seem to be at least repeating structures like Copala. Historically, there's two others that have been mined out in the area, one of them off our property and one on our property. And they're all along that same structural ligament that runs practically northwest and southeast into that San Enrique ground as well. So, we think that there's probably almost like pearls on a necklace of these bigger flatline structures, very similar to Copala. So, we do have a goal of continuing to find more in that project number one, call it area of influence, in a radius around project number one, which would be around our mill. And I think there's a high probability that there's another Copala-like structure somewhere along that trend. And so Jesus has been working hard with our team to determine the best approach. We've been using EM as well. We've completed some EM work that I think will help influence the next drill sites there for discovery. But it's like San Dimas. It started a couple hundred years ago in commercial production. It never really stopped. And, they found these structures, I mean, identical to Copala, what they called mantos at the time, and flatter lying, wide, high grade structures. And so I suspect, a couple things will happen. Of course, we'll continue to drill. The best part is with hundreds of millions of dollars of free cash flow, you can afford to do a pretty big annual drill program. And that's, it's really a very small percentage of that cash flow will be a huge exploration program annually. So that's exciting. So you can always continue to grow through exploration organically. But the other thing, of course, is once you're underground, you start to find new structures that you didn't otherwise know about. And so that's something that's exciting to us. And there's a bit of, well, I don't want to oversell this or anything like that, but we are excited about the test mine and where that's going through. There's a structure that we can't guarantee that it's going to turn into something spectacular, but some surface expression, very minimal surface expression of a vein that we haven't identified through drilling that we'll be running through with the drive. So there could be potential for new discovery in that test mine as well. Again, that's speculation, but when we are underground, we will find new structures at some point. I'm sure of that.
Well, that's exciting. And I wanted to bring up the dynamics of a epithermal vein for the clustering effect and also for the blind vein discovery situation, because I look at your Panuko project and I see plenty of known veins that do come to surface, and everywhere around them that's potential for additional blind veins to be found. But you just brought up something, and so that makes me very excited because I know how these epithermal vein systems work. But you just brought up something really exciting, and I can give you my experience. There's a mine not far from where I live that I went into, and you look at the surface expression, it's like half a meter. You go down 10 meters, and it's 10 meters wide. It just goes like, phew, and then just keeps going and going and going. And so, that being able to get underground and look at what the rocks look like and look at alteration around it, this is a fantastic way to find other veins and other blind veins.
Absolutely. And it's we often talk about those first years of mining because I think, the first year or two of mining is the most important. That's where you get your return. And that's why we have such a high RR is because, that first 2 years of cash flow is just immense, and it comes from extremely high grade material at Copala, very close to surface and very thick widths, and easily accessible. So we look at the mine plan in that context where you'll be underground, you'll paid off the mill, the payback is very rapid, and then from there you can really start to expand outward from your known areas of mining, and who knows how long Copala will go for. It extends under the town. We haven't drilled under the town. It's easier not to do that, and we can mine under the town. There's a buffer zone that's possible. There's tons of underground mines in the area that have been done historically. So we know there's good rock competency there and things like that. But once we get underground, I think there's no telling where we go from there in the sense of new structures, extending Copala further. Even Napoleon, we haven't even drilled off to depth yet either. All of these structures are wide open in basically every direction except for up. In the case of Napoleon, in the case of Copala, it actually was open upwards, closer to surface, and we did find another kind of treasure box of high grade mineralization between the historic resource, or not the previous resource, I should say, and with our infill drilling. So there is high potential for expanding mineralization once you're underground, and that's always been the case with those high quality Mexican underground silver veins that you know about. So it's exciting. It's a very exciting time for the company, and we've got a few big milestones this year to complete. Of course, the test mine, the feasibility study, and then financing and permitting. All of those are moving along very nicely, and you sprinkle in a little bit of discovery potential in there, and it's the most exciting silver story that I know of.
Well, and you describe something when you're describing your story, it reminds me of the way that mining companies were built early in my career. They would start out with, okay, we got this. And then they would keep the drills making their, building their future production. And I love that model that not enough companies are sort of chasing these days. But then another thing that morphs you into is that, these days there's not a lot of really good mid tiers. And because there's a lot of projects out there that are company builders for mid tiers, but too small for the behemoth majors. And so you kind of got a bit of a carte blanche for growth there, if you can build on your success. And a lot of people in this industry talk about, oh, we want to be taken over. Oh, we want to be taken over. Michael, I don't want you guys to be taken over. I want to see you guys build your company into the next great mid-tier that could grow into a major mining company. And I think you've got the perfect foundational project to do that from.
Well, that aligns perfectly with our vision as well too. And of course, you can't manage what you can't control, and of course we can't control other companies trying to take us over, and we don't want that either. It's as I said, it's like a winning lottery ticket to find a project like Panuko. The upside is incredible. Even just at project number one, it'll be one of the great cash flow engines of the silver space. But beyond that, the potential for organic growth through M&A, when in cash flow is huge. But I look at that organic growth and from the area around our project, and I see very clearly a pathway to, as I said, 30, 40, 50 million ounces of annual production. So that would set us up as a probably one of the largest silver mining companies out there, at least on the Canadian and U.S. exchanges. So it's it's a great place to aspire to be, and I think it's a pathway that we can undertake and achieve with this project. So it's for me it's extremely exciting.
Well, you got a couple defenses there. One is that, first everybody will be a naysayer. Oh, you can kind of like I saw that with those Cisco that I picked really early. Oh, they're not going to be able to build the town or move the town. Oh, they're not going to be able to find. Oh, it's too low grade, blah, blah, blah. And then they had to bring it into production. But the second defense is that once you get that into production and you can start to bolting on has a way of screwing with the accountants in these big companies because they say, oh, well, we want to see how that does and that does and that. It even happens to Newmont with Newcrest. They were an underperformer because they were trying to bring Newcrest into their merge it all together. And so, you may be susceptible, but you do have some defenses. And
Yeah,
I hope you guys grow this into a big mining company.
yeah, we do too. We do too.
I know we're running short on time, Michael, so I'm going to close it off. Did you have any quick closing comment?
No, I think it was great to catch up here, and we'll have some news flow coming shortly here, so it'll be great to reconnect once that happens, and always appreciate the time to get together and discuss our company with you.
Well, you're an easy story to tell, and I love telling it, and I love that you're a sponsor, so I can keep telling it as it evolves. And I think you're going to evolve into a great story that becomes a much bigger company that could grow into a big mining company. So, as always, folks, My bias is that they are a sponsor of my shows. They pay me to create content, which benefits in this case, Visla, and also my audience because it helps me to create content on the sector and other companies. But keep that bias in mind. But I would also add that they don't pay me for my opinion. That comes from my 30 years of experience in the business. But do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, go to their website, look at lots of interviews that Michael does because they're really good with digital marketing, and make your own assessment. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.